The scent of cedar and sage burned my nostrils as I entered the great hall, a heady mixture that marked the beginning of the choosing ceremony. Hundreds of candles flickered against stone walls that had witnessed this ritual for centuries before my birth. Their dancing light cast long shadows across the faces of pack members who lined the pathway, their eyes hungry with anticipation. The gentle rustle of ceremonial robes competed with the crackling of the massive hearth fire, but neither could drown out the thundering of my heart. I kept my gaze fixed on the polished stone floor beneath my feet, counting the cracks between tiles as Mother had taught me. 1, 2, 3, breathe. My blonde hair fell forward like a curtain, shielding me from the weight of their stares. As an Omega, I had learned early that invisibility was safety. To be forgotten was to survive. "Stand tall, Eleanor," my grandmother had whispered to me just hours before, as she fastened her silver pendant around my neck. The small crescent moon dangled just below my collarbone, cool against my skin. This belonged to my mother, and her mother before her. When the world tries to make you small, let it remind you that even the slightest sliver of light can illuminate the darkest night. It was the only heirloom of value in our modest home, and the only connection I had left to the grandmother who had raised me after my parents were killed in the Northern Territory Wars. Now, as I shuffled forward with the other Omegas, all of us dressed in simple white linen robes, I fought the urge to clutch the pendant. Drawing attention to oneself was dangerous, especially today. The choosing was meant to be an honor, a sacred tradition where alphas selected their personal attendants from the pool of available Omegas. In reality, it was a glorified servitude assignment, thinly veiled beneath ceremony and tradition. The Alpha King, Rowan Nightshade, sat upon his obsidian throne at the head of the hall. Even without looking directly at him, I could feel the weight of his presence. They said he had ascended to the throne after killing his own uncle in single combat, that he could shift faster than any alpha in the kingdom's history, that his wolf form stood taller than a horse. I had glimpsed him only once before, from a great distance, his massive shoulders and raven hair cutting a silhouette that haunted my dreams for weeks afterward. At his right hand sat his advisors, other high-ranking alphas with their chosen Omegas kneeling at their feet. The sight made my stomach clench. To be chosen was supposedly the highest honor an Omega could receive, but the hollow eyes of those kneeling told a different story. "Chin up, girl," hissed an older woman beside me, one of the ceremony guides. "You'll never be chosen if you keep staring at the floor like it holds the secrets of the moon goddess." I lifted my head slightly, just enough to appear obedient without making eye contact with any of the alphas. Eye contact could be interpreted as a challenge, and challenges from Omegas were met with swift, often brutal punishment. "Eleanor Moonriver," called the ceremony master, his voice echoing across the hall. My blood turned to ice. I hadn't expected to be called so soon. Traditionally, they began with the Omegas from the most prominent families, those with connections or skills that might prove useful to the nobility. My family was neither prominent nor connected. We were survivors, nothing more. The ceremony guide shoved me forward, and I stumbled slightly, catching myself before falling. A few chuckles rippled through the crowd, and heat bloomed across my face. Humiliation was a familiar companion, but it never grew easier to bear. I approached the center of the hall, my feet carrying me forward on memory alone as my mind raced with confusion and dread. Why call me now? What had I done to draw their attention? "State your lineage and abilities," commanded the ceremony master, his silver staff glinting in the firelight. "Eleanor Moonriver," I spoke, my voice barely audible even to my own ears. I cleared my throat and tried again. "Daughter of Sarah and William Moonriver of the Eastern Valleys. Granddaughter of Iris Moonriver, healer." I swallowed hard before adding, "I have training in herbcraft and basic healing." The great hall fell silent. Healing was a rare skill among our kind, even a rudimentary knowledge passed down through generations. My grandmother had begun teaching me before her passing last winter, but my training was far from complete. "Step forward to be examined," the ceremony master instructed. I moved toward him, keeping my eyes downcast. This was the moment I dreaded most, when alphas could approach to scent and inspect potential choices. My skin crawled at the thought of their invasive gazes, their hungry evaluations. No one moved. The silence stretched until it became painful, until I could feel every heartbeat in the room pulsing in time with mine. Had I committed some unknown offense? Was I to be passed over entirely, left to the scrap assignments given to unchosen Omegas? Then, a rustle of movement. The sound of a heavy cloak shifting against stone. Footsteps, deliberate and measured, descending from the dais where the royal throne stood. My peripheral vision caught the edges of a dark cloak, embroidered with silver threads that caught the light with each movement. Black boots came into view, stopping just within my line of sight. A collective gasp rippled through the hall. "Look at me," came a voice, deep and resonant, carrying authority that seemed to vibrate through my very bones. I couldn't breathe. The command had come from King Rowan himself. Alphas of his status never participated in the examination of Omegas. They sent representatives, advisors who would select suitable candidates for final approval. The king himself hadn't personally chosen an Omega in living memory. Slowly, fighting against every instinct that screamed for me to keep my head down, I raised my gaze. First, I saw broad shoulders encased in ceremonial armor, polished to a mirror shine. Then a strong jaw, darkened with stubble, high cheekbones that looked carved from marble, and finally, his eyes, amber and gold, like sunlight through whiskey, with vertical pupils that marked him as something more than merely wolf. Something ancient and powerful. Those eyes locked onto mine, and the world around us seemed to fade into a distant blur. I couldn't look away, couldn't remember how to breathe. There was something in his gaze that I couldn't decipher. Curiosity, perhaps, or hunger. "Eleanor Moonriver," he said, my name strange and new in his mouth. His voice had dropped to nearly a whisper. But in the profound silence of the hall, it carried to every corner. I felt something stir within me. Something that had slept undisturbed for 22 years. It unfurled like a flower opening to moonlight, stretching toward his voice as if it had waited all my life to be awakened by the sound of my name on his lips. Then came the scent, his scent, as he leaned closer. Pine forests, after rain, wood smoke, and something wild and untamable. My knees weakened, and I swayed slightly on my feet. His hand shot out, steadying me with a grip on my upper arm. The contact sent a jolt through my system, electric and terrifying. No alpha had ever touched me before, certainly not the king. The pressure of his fingers was firm but not painful, proprietary in a way that made my breath catch. "You smell of moonlight and secrets," he murmured, so quietly that perhaps only I could hear. "Tell me, little healer, what secrets do you keep?" Before I could form a response, before I could even process the question, he turned to the ceremony master, his hand still on my arm. "I claim this one," he announced. His voice returned to its full commanding power. The hall erupted in shocked whispers. I stood frozen, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The king never chose. And certainly not someone like me. Unremarkable, untrained, unconnected. The ceremony master looked as shocked as I felt. "Your Majesty, there are many more candidates to review." "I claim this one," King Rowan repeated, cutting him off with a tone that permitted no argument. "The ceremony is concluded." With his hand still gripping my arm, he turned toward the exit. I had no choice but to follow, my feet moving automatically while my mind remained trapped in disbelief. As he led me past the assembled crowd, I caught glimpses of their faces, shock, envy, confusion, and something darker in the eyes of the other alphas. Calculation, suspicion. At the edge of my awareness, I noticed another alpha rise from his seat among the king's advisors. Lord Darius, the king's cousin and rumored rival. His cold blue eyes followed our progress, his mouth a tight line of displeasure. As we passed through the massive double doors that led from the great hall, I risked one glance back over my shoulder. Lord Darius was still watching, and as our eyes met briefly, a chill ran down my spine. There was promise in that gaze, a promise of something dangerous. The doors swung closed behind us with a resounding thud that seemed to seal my fate. Ahead lay the king's private chambers, and a future I couldn't begin to imagine. Behind me lay everything I had ever known, severed by 4 simple words. I claim this one. The pendant at my throat suddenly felt heavier, my grandmother's words echoing in my mind. Even the slightest sliver of light can illuminate the darkest night. But as the king led me deeper into the shadowed hallway, I wondered if any light could survive in the darkness I was entering. The corridors of the palace were a labyrinth of stone and shadow, each turn taking us deeper into the heart of the fortress. King Rowan moved with confident strides, his hand still firmly around my upper arm. I struggled to keep pace, my ceremonial slippers sliding against the polished floor. The walls were adorned with tapestries depicting hunts and battles, the eyes of painted wolves seeming to follow our progress. Torches cast our shadows in grotesque, elongated forms that danced along the walls beside us. The scent of pine and cedar grew stronger as we walked, mingling with the metallic tang of old stone and something else, something primal that made the fine hairs on my arms stand on end. "Your Majesty," I finally managed to whisper, my voice trembling. "May I ask where?" "Questions later," he interrupted, not unkindly but with finality that brooked no argument. We passed guards who straightened as we approached, their eyes widening slightly at the sight of me before they snapped back to attention. A pair of beta servants scurried out of our path, pressing themselves against the wall, their gazes dropping to the floor. After what felt like an eternity, we reached an imposing door carved with the royal insignia, a wolf, howling beneath a crescent moon. King Rowan released my arm to press his palm against the wood. Something clicked, and the door swung inward. "Enter," he commanded. I hesitated at the threshold, my heart hammering against my ribs. Everything I'd ever been taught told me that entering an Alpha's private chambers, especially alone, was dangerous for an unclaimed Omega, but he had claimed me, hadn't he? In front of the entire court. The room beyond was not what I expected. Instead of the opulent bedchamber I had feared, I found myself in a spacious study. Bookshelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling, interrupted only by tall windows that looked out over the forest beyond the palace walls. A massive desk dominated one end of the room, its surface covered with maps and documents. A fire crackled in a stone hearth, casting the room in warm amber light that reminded me of the king's eyes. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair across from a smaller, more intimate seating area near the fire. I perched on the edge of the chair, hands folded in my lap, gaze fixed on the intricate pattern of the rug beneath my feet. The soft cushion seemed to swallow me, making me feel even smaller in his presence. King Rowan didn't sit immediately. Instead, he moved to a sideboard and poured amber liquid into 2 crystal glasses. The clink of glass against glass sounded unnaturally loud in the quiet room. "Drink," he said, offering me one of the glasses. I accepted it with shaking hands, careful not to let our fingers brush. The liquid burned a path down my throat when I took a small sip. But the warmth that bloomed in my chest afterward was not unpleasant. He lowered himself into the chair opposite mine, his powerful frame making the furniture seem delicate by comparison. For several long moments, he simply observed me, those unusual eyes tracking every minute shift of my posture, every flicker of expression I couldn't suppress. "Do you know why I chose you, Eleanor Moonriver?" he finally asked, his voice quieter now that we were alone. I shook my head slightly, still not meeting his gaze directly. "No, Your Majesty. Look at me when you speak," he said, the command gentle but unmistakable. Gathering every shred of courage I possessed, I raised my eyes to his. The intensity of his gaze nearly stole my breath again. "No, Your Majesty," I repeated. "I don't know why you chose me." He leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees, the glass dangling from long fingers. "When you entered the hall, every other Omega kept their eyes down, their shoulders hunched. Proper behavior for the ceremony, of course." His lips curled in what might have been a smile or a grimace. "But you were counting." My breath caught. "Counting?" "The tiles on the floor. I watched you. 1, 2, 3. Your lips moved slightly with each number." He tilted his head, studying me, not in fear or submission but in focus, as if you were solving a puzzle only you could see. I stared at him, stunned that he had noticed such a small detail from his position on the throne. "And then there's your scent," he continued, inhaling deeply as if to capture it again. "Unique. Most Omegas smell of submission, of eagerness to please. You smell of—" He paused, searching for the word. "Resilience." And the pendant at my throat suddenly felt warm against my skin, almost as if responding to his words. "I am resilient?" The question escaped before I could stop it, disbelief evident in my tone. Something flashed in his eyes, amusement perhaps. "You survived the Northern Territory Wars as a child. You lost your parents, were raised by a healer grandmother who taught you her craft, and when she passed you continued to survive. Yes, Eleanor Moonriver. I would call that resilient. My fingers tightened around the crystal glass. How do you know these things about me? I make it my business to know my subjects, he replied smoothly. Too smoothly. There was something he wasn't telling me. Before I could ponder this further, a sharp knock at the door interrupted us. King Rowan's expression darkened. Enter, he called, his voice returning to its commanding timbre. The door opened to reveal a tall, lean man with silver at his temples. His scent marked him as an alpha, though not as powerful as the king. His eyes widened slightly at the sight of me before fixing on Rowan. Your Majesty, forgive the interruption. The council is assembled and awaiting your presence. Lord Darius is impatient. King Rowan's jaw tightened. Darius can learn patience, Thorn. Tell them I'll arrive when I'm ready. The man, Thorn, bowed slightly, but didn't immediately leave. There's also the matter of the northern delegation. They've requested to move tomorrow's audience earlier. Denied, Rowan said flatly. They'll wait until the appointed time. Thorn's gaze flickered to me again, curiosity evident in his expression. And your new companion, Your Majesty? Shall I arrange quarters for her in the Omega Wing? The king's response was immediate and sharp. No, have the chamber adjoining mine prepared. He turned to me. You'll need to be close if I require your healing skills. Thorn couldn't quite mask his surprise, though he recovered quickly. As you wish, Your Majesty. With another bow, he withdrew, closing the door behind him. When we were alone again, King Rowan set down his glass and stood. The sudden movement made me flinch involuntarily, a reaction he noted with a slight narrowing of his eyes. You fear me? He stated. It wasn't a question, but I felt compelled to answer anyway. I fear what I don't understand, Your Majesty. And I don't understand why I'm here. He moved toward one of the tall windows, his back to me as he gazed out at the darkening sky. The politics of the court are complex and treacherous, little healer. What I require from you is equally complex, but not, I think, treacherous. What exactly do you require from me? I asked, surprising myself with my boldness. He turned then, and for the first time, I saw something vulnerable pass across his features. So quickly I might have imagined it. Honesty, he said simply. A rare commodity in these halls. Before I could respond, he crossed to the door and opened it, revealing a beta servant waiting outside. Mira will show you to your chambers and provide whatever you need. Rest. Tomorrow will bring challenges enough. I rose unsteadily to my feet, the reality of my situation beginning to sink in. I was now the personal Omega to the Alpha King, a position that would place me directly in the crosshairs of court politics I barely understood. Your Majesty, I began, uncertain what I even wanted to ask. Tomorrow, Eleanor, he said, his voice softer than I'd heard it yet. Rest now. As I followed the servant from the room, I felt his eyes on me until the door closed between us. Mira led me through another series of corridors, these more richly appointed than the ones I'd traversed with the king. Plush carpets muffled our footsteps, and the stone walls gave way to wood paneling inlaid with mother of pearl. Here we are, miss, Mira said, opening a door that revealed a chamber more luxurious than any I'd ever seen. The king's quarters are through that door. She pointed to a connecting door on the far wall. The implication made my cheeks burn. I don't... Mira's expression softened slightly. The king has never claimed an Omega before, miss. Not in all the years I've served here. It's caused quite a stir below stairs. Why not? I asked before I could stop myself. She shrugged. Some say he never found one worthy. Others say it's because of what happened to his mother. She was an Omega, you know, before she married the old king. My curiosity piqued. What happened to her? Mira's eyes widened, and she glanced nervously over her shoulder. It's not my place to say, miss. Court gossip isn't for the likes of me to spread. She moved to a wardrobe and opened it to reveal garments far finer than anything I'd ever owned. These should fit you. The bath chamber is through there. If you need anything, just pull that bell cord. After she left, I stood motionless in the center of the room, overwhelmed by the sudden change in my circumstances. Just this morning I had been Eleanor Moonriver, orphaned Omega from the Eastern Valleys, preparing myself for a life of servitude to whichever minor alpha might choose me. Now I was... what exactly? The king's Omega? His healer? A pawn in some court game I didn't understand? I moved to the window and gazed out at the palace grounds, The moon had risen, its crescent shape echoing the pendant I wore. In the courtyard below, guards patrolled in precise patterns. Beyond the walls, the great forest stretched like a dark sea to the horizon. A movement in the courtyard caught my attention. Lord Darius stood in conversation with two other alphas, their heads bent close together. Even from this distance, there was something predatory in their posture. As if sensing my observation, Darius looked up suddenly, his gaze searching the windows until it seemed to lock with mine. I stepped back hastily, heart racing. Something about that man frightened me on a primal level. Turning away from the window, I caught my reflection in a mirror across the room. I barely recognized myself. Cheeks flushed, blue eyes wide with anxiety, blonde hair tangled from the day's events. The white ceremonial robe seemed out of place against the rich colors of the chamber. On impulse, I removed my grandmother's pendant, holding it in my palm. The silver crescent gleamed in the lamplight, a piece of who I had been before today. When the world tries to make you small, let it remind you that even the slightest sliver of light can illuminate the darkest night. I had never felt smaller than I did now, standing in the Alpha King's palace, claimed for reasons I didn't understand. But as I fastened the pendant back around my throat, I made a silent promise to my grandmother's memory. I would not let this place extinguish my light. A knock at the door startled me from my thoughts. When I opened it, I found a young beta servant carrying a tray of food. "The king thought you might be hungry, miss," she explained, setting the tray on a small table. As she turned to leave, I gathered my courage. "Wait, please, what's your name?" She seemed surprised by the question. "Lily, miss." "Lily, what do you know about the king? What kind of alpha is he?" She hesitated, clearly weighing her response. "Firm but fair, miss, not given to the cruelties some alphas enjoy, but dangerous when crossed." She lowered her voice. "They say he can read minds sometimes, know things he shouldn't. But that's just below stairs talk." After Lily left, I picked at the food despite my churning stomach. My mind raced with questions. Why me? What did the king truly want, and how was I supposed to navigate a court that had already begun to take notice of my unprecedented position? The connecting door to the king's chambers remained closed, a silent reminder of the thin barrier between my new life and the man who had claimed me. As I finally lay down to sleep in the unfamiliar bed, my hand clutched my grandmother's pendant. Outside, clouds drifted across the crescent moon, casting the room in shifting patterns of light and shadow. In the darkness, I could almost hear King Rowan's words again. "You smell of moonlight and secrets. Tell me, little healer, what secrets do you keep?" The truth was, I didn't know what secrets I kept, but I had a growing suspicion that before long, I would find out. Morning arrived with harsh clarity, sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to cover. I woke disoriented, the luxurious bed and unfamiliar surroundings momentarily confusing me, until yesterday's events came rushing back. The choosing ceremony, the king's unexpected claim, the strange conversation in his study. I sat up, pushing tangled blonde hair from my face. My fingers automatically sought the silver pendant at my throat, finding comfort in its familiar weight. A soft knock at the door preceded Mira's entrance. She carried a tray of breakfast and a bundle of clothing. "Good morning, miss. The king requests your presence at the council meeting this morning." She set the tray beside my bed. "He said to tell you that your skills might be needed." My skills? The only skills I possessed were rudimentary herbcraft and healing knowledge, hardly useful at a political council meeting. "When am I expected?" I asked, reaching for the steaming cup of tea she'd brought. "1 hour, miss. The blue dress should fit well enough for now. A proper wardrobe is being arranged." She hesitated, then added, "If I may say, miss, many eyes will be watching you today. The king's claim has caused quite a stir." After she left, I dressed carefully in the provided garments, a gown of midnight blue that fit as if made for me, though I knew that couldn't be possible. The fabric was finer than anything I'd ever worn, soft against my skin and embroidered with silver thread that caught the light when I moved. I plaited my hair in a simple style, letting it hang over one shoulder. As I fastened my grandmother's pendant around my neck, a sharp rap came at the door, connecting my chamber to the king's. "Enter," I called, my voice steadier than I felt. King Rowan filled the doorway, even more imposing in daylight than he had been in the candlelit study. He wore formal attire, a deep charcoal tunic with silver accents, the royal crest emblazoned on his chest. His raven hair was tied back, emphasizing the sharp angles of his face. Those amber eyes assessed me with unnerving thoroughness. "You look," he began, then seemed to reconsider his words. "The dress suits you." "Thank you, Your Majesty," I replied, dropping my gaze. "Eleanor." The way he said my name, soft but commanding, drew my eyes back to his. "When we are alone, you may call me Rowan." The informality shocked me. "That wouldn't be proper, I didn't bring you here for propriety," he interrupted. "I brought you here for honesty, remember? Titles create distance. Distance breeds deception." I swallowed hard. "As you wish. Rowan." His name felt strange on my tongue, forbidden and intimate. A small smile curved his lips, transforming his severe features into something almost approachable. "Better, now come. The council awaits, and they're not known for their patience." He offered his arm, another shocking breach of protocol. Alphas, especially royal ones, didn't escort Omegas like equals. Yet here was the king, extending his arm as he might to a high-born lady. Cautiously, I placed my hand on his forearm, feeling the coiled strength beneath the fabric. His scent enveloped me immediately. Pine and cedar, stronger in the morning, with undertones of something I couldn't name but that made my pulse quicken. "The council will have questions about your presence," he said, as we walked through corridors already bustling with palace staff. "Let me answer them. Observe everything, but say nothing unless I directly ask you to speak. Can you do that?" "Yes, I caught myself. "Yes, Rowan." That slight smile appeared again. "Good. Oh, and Eleanor?" He paused, turning to face me fully. "Lord Darius will be particularly interested in you. Do not meet his gaze directly if you can avoid it." "Why?" I couldn't stop the question. Rowan's expression darkened. "Let's just say he has a particular affinity for Omegas with unusual qualities. I'd prefer he not develop an interest in you." The warning sent a chill down my spine, remembering Darius's predatory gaze from the ceremony. "I understand." As we approached the council chamber, the guards stationed outside straightened to attention. They opened the massive doors without announcement, revealing a long table surrounded by a dozen of the most powerful alphas in the kingdom. All conversation ceased as we entered. I felt their collective attention shift to me like a physical weight, their expressions ranging from surprise, to curiosity, to outright hostility. At the far end of the table sat Lord Darius, his cold blue eyes fixed on my face, with an intensity that made me instinctively tighten my grip on Rowan's arm. "Forgive my tardiness," Rowan said, his voice resonating with authority as he led me to the head of the table. A servant hurried forward to pull out his chair, but I was left standing uncertainly at his side. There was no second chair, no place for an Omega at this table of alphas. Rowan noticed the dilemma and frowned. "Bring another chair," he commanded. "Now." The silence grew heavier as servants scrambled to fulfill his order. When a chair was finally placed beside his, Rowan gestured for me to sit, an unprecedented honor that caused several council members to exchange alarmed glances. "Your Majesty," began an older alpha with silver streaking his auburn hair, "while we welcome your companion. Council matters are traditionally discussed among alphas alone." "Traditions change, Lord Bennett," Rowan replied smoothly. "Eleanor Moonriver is here at my request. Her insights may prove valuable." "Insights?" Lord Darius finally spoke, his voice deceptively soft. "I wasn't aware that this particular Omega had insights worth sharing with the Royal Council. Perhaps your Majesty could enlighten us about her qualifications." The emphasis he placed on the final word carried insinuations that made my cheeks burn. Several council members smirked. "She is trained in herbcraft and healing," Rowan said, seemingly unperturbed. "Given the nature of our current concerns, her knowledge could prove useful." Lord Bennett leaned forward. "You refer to the illness in the northern villages?" Rowan nodded. "Reports indicate it's spreading faster than anticipated. 3 more villages reported cases yesterday." This was news to me. I hadn't heard of any illness sweeping the northern territories, but then, news traveled slowly to the eastern valleys where I'd lived. "My sources say it's nothing more than a seasonal fever," said another council member, a stocky alpha with a closely cropped beard. "Hardly worth our concern. Your sources are wrong, Lord Keller." Rowan replied sharply. This is something different. The symptoms are unusual, rapid onset, high fever followed by a deep chill, and then he hesitated, his expression grim. Victims lose control of their shifts. They're caught between human and wolf form, unable to complete the transformation in either direction. Death follows within days. A shocked murmur ran through the council. Loss of shift control was one of the most dreaded conditions among our kind. The agony was said to be unbearable. Has anyone survived? Asked a female alpha, the only woman besides me in the room. Not yet, Lady Verna, Rowan answered, which is why we need a different approach. He turned to me. Eleanor, you have training in herbcraft. Have you ever encountered or heard of such symptoms? All eyes turned to me. I fought the urge to shrink under their scrutiny, focusing instead on the question. My grandmother had taught me to approach medical questions methodically, to consider all possibilities before offering an opinion. I would need more information. I caught myself. These symptoms could indicate several possibilities. Did the illness begin after the victims ate something specific? Were they exposed to any unusual plants or minerals? Is it confined to certain bloodlines? My questions seemed to impress some council members and annoy others. Lord Darius, in particular, watched me with heightened interest that made my skin crawl. The reports don't specify, Rowan said. But we've arranged for you to examine the latest victim, a messenger who collapsed upon reaching the palace gates yesterday. He's currently in the infirmary. This was news to me as well, and I couldn't hide my surprise. You wish me to examine him? Yes, Rowan confirmed. After the council meeting, the royal physician has tried conventional treatments without success. Lord Darius laughed softly. Surely you don't expect an untested Omega with incomplete training to succeed where Master Aldrich has failed. The man has 30 years of experience. Sometimes fresh eyes see what experienced ones miss, Rowan countered. Besides, Eleanor comes from a line of healers who specialized in shift-related ailments. Her grandmother was Iris Moonriver. Several council members reacted to the name, including Lord Bennett, whose eyes widened. Iris Moonriver of the Eastern Valleys? She was renowned for her healing abilities, particularly with shift complications. I stared at Rowan, startled by his knowledge of my grandmother. She had indeed been known for her skills with shift-related illnesses, but her reputation had been local, confined mostly to our valley. How had the king known about her specialization? Precisely, Rowan said. Now, shall we continue with other matters? The border dispute with the Southern Pack requires our attention. The meeting proceeded, discussions shifting to territorial issues, resource allocation, and diplomatic relations with neighboring packs. I listened attentively, studying the dynamics between council members. Lord Darius opposed almost every suggestion Rowan made, though he couched his objections in reasonable terms. Others seemed to align with either Rowan or Darius, creating a clear division within the council. Throughout the meeting, I noticed Rowan occasionally touching the back of my chair or leaning slightly toward me when speaking. Subtle gestures that nonetheless sent a clear message to the others. I was under his protection. Whether this was purely political or something more, I couldn't tell. Finally, after nearly 2 hours of discussion, Rowan stood. We'll reconvene tomorrow. Lord Bennett, prepare a report on the Southern Pack's latest proposal. Lady Verna, I want updated numbers on the grain reserves. As the council members filed out, many cast curious glances my way. Lord Darius lingered, approaching us with a smooth confidence that set my nerves on edge. Your Majesty, he began, his gaze sliding to me. I wonder if I might borrow your new healer for a consultation. One of my household staff has developed an unusual rash that has our physician puzzled. Rowan's posture stiffened slightly. Perhaps another time, Darius. Eleanor has an urgent matter to attend to in the infirmary. Darius smiled, the expression not reaching his eyes. Of course. Another time, then. He turned his attention fully to me. I look forward to learning more about your talents, Eleanor Moonriver. The way he said my name made it sound like a threat. I fought the impulse to step closer to Rowan. After Darius left, Rowan led me from the council chamber, his hand at the small of my back. Once we were alone in the corridor, I released the breath I'd been holding. He frightens me. I admitted quietly. Good, Rowan replied. Fear will keep you cautious around him. Darius is dangerous, especially to Omegas. I wanted to ask more, but we had reached the infirmary, a large, airy chamber on the palace's eastern side. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating rows of beds, most unoccupied. At the far end, screens had been erected around a single bed. An older man with a trim white beard approached us, bowing deeply to Rowan. Your Majesty, we weren't expecting you personally. Master Aldrich, Rowan acknowledged. This is Eleanor Moonriver. She has training in herbcraft and healing, particularly with shift-related conditions. I'd like her to examine the messenger. Aldrich's skeptical gaze swept over me. With respect, Your Majesty, the man's condition is highly unstable. I'm not sure an untrained... She is Iris Moonriver's granddaughter, Rowan interrupted. Recognition flickered in Aldrich's eyes. I see. Very well, but I must warn you, it's disturbing. He led us to the screened-off bed. The smell hit me before we even rounded the partition. A wrong scent, bitter and metallic, undercut with the rot of decay, though the man still lived. On the bed lay a figure that could no longer be properly called either human or wolf. Patches of fur sprouted from skin that stretched and contracted as if something beneath was constantly trying to reshape itself. One arm had partially transformed into a paw, claws extending from fingers that were neither human nor wolf. His face was the worst. Features caught mid-shift, jaws elongated, ears pointed, yet still recognizably human in the eyes that gazed at us with lucid terror. How long has he been like this? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. He arrived yesterday at dusk, already in the early stages, Aldrich replied. The progression was rapid. I've tried wolfsbane tincture, silver powder suspension, and the sacred herbs, all without effect. I approached the bed cautiously. May I asked the suffering man. He gave a jerky nod, a whimpering sound escaping his distorted throat. Gently, I placed my hands on his forehead. The skin burned beneath my touch, yet his body shivered with cold. Something was terribly wrong with his shift energy, the primal force that allowed our kind to transform between human and wolf forms. It felt corrupted somehow, as if a foreign presence had invaded the natural flow. Has he been able to tell you where he came from? What he might have encountered? I asked. Northern Province, the man rasped, his voice barely human. Village of Stonebridge, water, something in the water. His body suddenly convulsed, back arching off the bed. Aldrich and an assistant rushed forward to hold him down, but I instinctively placed my palm over his heart. Easy, I murmured, falling into the soothing rhythm my grandmother had taught me for calming distressed patients. Breathe with me, slow and steady. To my surprise, he responded, his spasms gradually subsiding. As my hand remained over his heart, I felt something strange, a subtle resonance between my energy and his, as if my presence was temporarily stabilizing his shift. It wasn't a technique my grandmother had taught me. It was happening instinctively. When I finally withdrew my hand, I glanced up to find both Aldrich and Rowan watching me intently. You calmed the shift tremors, Aldrich said, wonder and suspicion mingling in his voice. How? I don't know, I answered honestly. It just happened. Rowan's expression was unreadable, but his eyes burned with an intensity that made me want to look away. What do you think caused this condition? He asked. I considered carefully before answering. Something is interfering with the natural shift energy. It feels deliberate, not like a natural illness. The messenger mentioned the water in Stonebridge. I think something might have been introduced to their water supply. Poison? Aldrich asked sharply. Not conventional poison, I clarified. Something that specifically targets our ability to shift. I've never seen anything like it, but my grandmother's journals mentioned ancient herbs that could disrupt shifting if combined correctly. Rowan's jaw tightened. Someone with knowledge of such herbs could create this condition intentionally. Yes, I agreed, the implications sinking in. This isn't a natural outbreak. Someone is attacking your people, Your Majesty. The messenger seized again, more violently this time. Despite our best efforts, his body contorted unnaturally, bones cracking as they tried to reshape themselves against nature's design. His scream transformed into a howl that cut off abruptly as he went limp. Aldrich checked for signs of life, then shook his head. He's gone. I stepped back, shaken by the death I'd been powerless to prevent. Rowan's hand found my shoulder, steadying me. You did more for him than anyone else could have, he said quietly. You gave him moments of peace before the end. As we left the infirmary, Rowan guided me to a small courtyard garden where we could speak privately. The autumn air was crisp, golden leaves spiraling down from ornamental trees. You showed unusual ability in there, he said without preamble. That wasn't just basic herbcraft training. I stared down at my hands, still feeling the strange resonance that had passed between me and the dying messenger. I don't know what happened. I've never done that before. Rowan studied me for a long moment. I think you do know, Eleanor, or at least you suspect. He reached out, his fingers brushing my grandmother's pendant. This isn't just a family heirloom, is it? His touch sent a jolt through me, not unpleasant, but startling in its intensity. My grandmother said it would protect me. I always thought she meant spiritually or emotionally, not literally. Some objects carry power, Rowan said. Especially those passed through bloodlines with special abilities. I stepped back, suddenly uneasy. What are you suggesting? His amber eyes held mine. I think you know exactly what I'm suggesting, Eleanor. And I think it's the real reason you kept your head down at the choosing ceremony. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. You're an Omega healer. The words hung in the air between us, naming what I had suspected but never fully acknowledged. Omega healers were rare, almost mythical. Omegas born with the ability to manipulate shift energy to heal wounds that conventional medicine couldn't touch. They were coveted, protected, and sometimes exploited for their gifts. My grandmother had never explicitly told me I was an Omega healer, but her teachings had gone far beyond standard herbcraft. And now, with what had happened in the infirmary. If that's true, I said carefully, then you've placed me in considerable danger by bringing me to court, haven't you? Rowan's expression hardened. I've placed you under my protection, which is far safer than leaving you to be discovered by someone like Darius. The implication was clear. Rowan had known what I was before he chose me. But how? And more importantly, why? Tell me the truth, I demanded, surprised by my own boldness. Why did you really claim me at the ceremony? His answer, when it came, was not what I expected. Because I dreamed of you, Eleanor Moonriver, 3 nights in a row before the ceremony. I dreamed of a blonde Omega with a silver crescent pendant who could calm the tremors of a corrupted shift. His voice was low, intense. And on the 3rd night, I dreamed that without you, my kingdom would fall. I stared at Rowan, trying to process his revelation. Dreams were significant among our kind, sometimes mere fantasies, but occasionally prophetic, especially for royal bloodlines. You claimed me because of a dream, I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. I claimed you because when I saw you, I recognized you. He corrected. The dream merely prepared me for your arrival. A cool breeze swept through the courtyard, carrying the scent of approaching rain. I shivered. Though whether from the chill or his words, I couldn't tell. And now someone is poisoning your people's water supply, just as your dream foretold. I wrapped my arms around myself. What does it mean? Rowan's expression grew grave. It means we have an enemy with knowledge of ancient magic, someone targeting the very essence of what we are. His eyes met mine. And it means you and I are connected in ways neither of us fully understands yet. Before I could respond, rapid footsteps approached. Thorn appeared at the courtyard entrance, his expression tense. Your Majesty, forgive the interruption. Another messenger has arrived from the north with reports of 3 more villages affected, and... He hesitated, glancing at me. Speak freely, Thorn, Rowan commanded. Eleanor is fully involved in this matter now. Thorn nodded. Lord Darius is gathering his personal guard for what he calls a scouting mission to the Northern Territories. He's requesting royal sanction. Rowan's face darkened. When does he intend to depart? Within the hour, Your Majesty. Deny the request. I'll speak with him myself. Rowan turned to me. Return to your chambers and review any of your grandmother's journals or notes you brought with you. Look for anything about corrupted shifts or waterborne contaminants. I hesitated. I have only 1 journal with me. The rest remain in my grandmother's cottage in the Eastern Valleys. Rowan exchanged a look with Thorn. Arrange for a squad to escort Eleanor to her grandmother's home at first light tomorrow. Full guard, Thorne. No risks. Yes, Your Majesty. As Thorne departed, Rowan took my hand. Another unexpected gesture that sent warmth spreading up my arm. This illness is spreading faster than we anticipated. We need your knowledge, Eleanor. I'll do what I can, I promised, though doubt gnawed at me. I was barely trained, with abilities I didn't fully understand or control. I know you will. His thumb brushed lightly over my knuckles. Trust your instincts. They led you to survive this long as an unidentified Omega healer. No small feat. His confidence in me was both comforting and terrifying. As he released my hand and turned to leave, another question burst from me. Rowan, if you dreamed of me, what else did you see? What happens next? He paused, his broad shoulders tense beneath the formal attire. Dreams show possibilities, not certainties. He glanced back, his amber eyes troubled. But in every version I saw, there was pain before resolution. Be careful, Eleanor. Trust no one completely, not even me. With that cryptic warning, he strode away, leaving me alone with questions multiplying in my mind. In my chambers, I opened my grandmother's journal, carefully turning pages filled with her elegant script. Most entries detailed common remedies. Tinctures for fevers, poultices for wounds, teas for various ailments. But toward the back, I found a section marked with a small crescent moon, similar to my pendant. The healer's gift manifests differently in each bloodline. Ours flows through the female line, strongest in those born under the crescent moon. Eleanor shows signs already, though she doesn't yet understand what she feels when she touches the suffering. The pendant will help focus her abilities until she learns to channel them naturally. I touched the silver crescent at my throat. My birthday did indeed fall during the crescent moon phase, something I'd never considered significant. Further down the page, another passage caught my attention. Corrupted shift energy can come from many sources: curses, poisons, ancient magic. But the most dangerous comes from within, when pack turns against pack, when ancient hatreds resurface. The water carries memory and intention. What is poured into the well with hatred will spread like ripples, disrupting the natural order. I was still pondering these words when a soft knock came at my door. I closed the journal quickly before calling, "Enter." Lily appeared, carrying a covered tray. "Your evening meal, miss." She set it down, then hesitated. "There's talk below stairs, miss, about you and the messenger." I stiffened. "What kind of talk?" "They say you calmed his pain when Master Aldrich couldn't. That you have the healer's touch." She lowered her voice. "Is it true?" The question felt like a trap, though Lily's expression showed only curiosity. "I only did what anyone with basic training would do," I replied carefully. She didn't look convinced, but nodded respectfully. "Of course, miss. Oh, and Lady Verna requested to see you after your meal. She's in the Eastern Solar." After Lily left, I picked at my food, appetite diminished by the day's events. Lady Verna's invitation intrigued me. She'd been the only female alpha on the council, and one of the few who hadn't looked at me with outright suspicion. The Eastern Solar proved to be a beautiful chamber with windows that caught the late afternoon sun. Lady Verna sat by a small fire, her silver-streaked dark hair loose around her shoulders, making her appear less formal than she had in the council meeting. "Eleanor," she greeted warmly. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." I took the offered chair, noticing that she'd positioned it as an equal to hers, not lower as would be traditional for an Omega. "You've caused quite a stir in our little court," she said, her green eyes assessing me thoughtfully. "The king has never shown interest in claiming an Omega before, yet here you are, and immediately involved in matters of state security. It wasn't my intention to cause disruption," I said carefully. She smiled. "The most significant changes rarely come from intention, they come from necessity." She leaned forward slightly. "I knew your grandmother, you know." This surprised me. "You did?" "Many years ago, before I took my place on the council, I was injured in a border skirmish, a wound that wouldn't heal properly. My shift was affected. The royal physician declared it beyond his abilities." Her eyes grew distant with memory. "Someone suggested I seek out Iris Moonriver in the eastern valleys. I traveled there, not expecting much. I found a simple cottage, and a woman who took one look at my wound and knew exactly what to do." "That sounds like my grandmother," I said softly. Lady Verna rolled up her sleeve, revealing a forearm marked with a long, silvery scar. She healed what others couldn't. And while she worked, she told me something I've never forgotten. She said, "The strength of our kind isn't in our teeth or claws, but in our capacity to heal what's broken." I didn't understand then. I think I'm beginning to now. She studied me with renewed interest. "You have her gift, don't you?" The direct question demanded honesty. "I'm only beginning to understand it myself." She nodded, as if my answer confirmed something. "Be careful, Eleanor. There are those in court who fear what they don't understand, and others who would exploit it." Her expression grew serious, particularly Lord Darius. "The king has warned me about him," I acknowledged. "Good. But there's more you should know." She glanced toward the door, then lowered her voice. "Darius has been meeting with representatives from the Northern Territory in secret. My sources saw them together 3 nights ago, outside the palace walls. The Northern Territory, where the illness had first appeared. You think he's involved in what's happening?" "I think nothing happens in this kingdom without Darius knowing about it," she replied carefully. "Whether he's directly involved or merely exploiting the situation, I can't say, but his sudden interest in the northern villages is concerning." "Why tell me this?" I asked, suspicion edging into my thoughts. "Because Rowan trusts you, and I trust Rowan," she said simply. "And because your grandmother once showed kindness to a stranger when she had no obligation to do so. I repay my debts." Eleanor Moonriver. As I returned to my chambers, Lady Verna's warning mingled with Rowan's. Trust no one completely. The palace suddenly felt like a maze of shadows, with dangers lurking behind polite smiles and formal bows. I found another visitor waiting outside my door. Thorn, his expression grim. "The king requests your presence immediately," he said without preamble. "There's been a development." He led me not to Rowan's study, but to a smaller chamber I hadn't seen before. Maps covered the walls, and a large table dominated the center, strewn with reports and sketches. Rowan stood examining one such map, his posture rigid with tension. He looked up as we entered, his eyes finding mine immediately. "Eleanor, thank you for coming quickly." He gestured to the map. "We've marked all villages reporting cases of the shift illness. I thought perhaps you might see a pattern we've missed." I approached the table, studying the red marks dotting the northern regions of the kingdom. They formed a rough line following. "The river," I said, tracing the blue line winding through the marked villages. "Every affected village draws water from the Moonflow River." Rowan nodded. "Exactly as you suspected, something in the water. But there's more." He indicated a spot near the river's source. "This is Blackcrest Mountain. There's an abandoned silver mine here that was sealed decades ago after an accident. Our latest reports indicate the seals have been broken. Someone has been inside. Silver can affect our shifting," I murmured, pieces falling into place. "If someone found a way to introduce it into the water supply in a particular form, it could explain the symptoms," Rowan agreed. "But ordinary silver wouldn't cause the corruption we're seeing. It would need to be combined with something else." My grandmother's journal entry flashed in my mind. The water carries memory and intention. What is poured into the well with hatred will spread like ripples. "It's not just what's in the water," I said slowly. "It's the intention behind it. Someone is deliberately poisoning your people, using silver and something else, something magical." Thorn shifted uncomfortably at the mention of magic, but Rowan's expression remained focused. "Can you counter it?" The question hit me with the force of a physical blow. He was asking if I could save his kingdom, just as his dream had suggested. "I don't know," I admitted. "I need my grandmother's other journals. There might be something there, a remedy, a counter-ritual, something to purify the water." "You'll leave for the eastern valleys at first light," Rowan confirmed. "But tonight I need you to examine water samples we've collected from affected villages. See if you can sense anything useful." As Thorn left to retrieve the samples, Rowan moved closer to me, his voice dropping. "I should have told you everything from the beginning. I'm sorry for the half-truths." "Why didn't you?" I asked, the question that had been burning inside me since his revelation about the dreams. His eyes held mine. "Because some truths sound like madness until you're ready to hear them. And because..." He hesitated. "I needed to be certain you were what I thought. What I hoped." You were. And now? Now I'm certain, he said simply. And now we have no more time for secrets. Thorn returned with 6 glass vials, each labeled with a village name. The water inside looked clear and ordinary, betraying nothing of its deadly nature. How do I began, uncertain of the procedure. Trust your instincts, Rowan said quietly. You calmed the messenger's corrupted shift. That same sensitivity might allow you to detect what's affecting the water. Taking a deep breath, I selected the first vial, water from Stonebridge, where the illness had initially appeared. I uncorked it, the simple action somehow momentous in the silent chamber. Instead of smelling or tasting it, which seemed dangerous, I dipped my fingertips into the liquid. A sensation like ice spreading up my arm made me gasp. There was something wrong in this water. A discordant energy that felt jagged and malevolent. I closed my eyes, trying to identify the source of the wrongness. Silver, I murmured, concentrating, but altered somehow, bound to something else. I reached deeper with my senses, and intention. Hatred. Someone infused this with emotion while creating it. When I opened my eyes, Rowan was watching me intently. Can you counter it? Not here. Not now, I admitted, but I think with the right herbs and ritual, at the source. I withdrew my fingers, wiping them carefully on a cloth. I need more knowledge, and that means my grandmother's journals. Rowan nodded. Rest tonight. Tomorrow's journey will be demanding. As I turned to leave, he caught my wrist gently. Eleanor. His voice had softened. What you did today, the comfort you gave the messenger, what you've discovered, it matters. Remember that. His touch lingered a moment longer than necessary, his thumb tracing a small circle on my inner wrist. The contact sent warmth cascading through me, so different from the cold malevolence of the tainted water. Good night, Rowan, I whispered. Good night, little healer. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed in the luxurious bed, my mind replaying the day's events, the dying messenger, the poisoned water, Lady Verna's warning about Darius, Rowan's dreams. When I finally drifted off, my own dreams were fragmented and disturbing, filled with shadowy figures poisoning wells and rivers while wolves howled in agony. I woke before dawn, feeling as though I hadn't slept at all. Mira arrived shortly after with traveling clothes, sturdy boots, comfortable leggings, and a warm tunic, all of better quality than anything I'd owned before. The king requests you join him for breakfast before departing, she informed me, helping me braid my hair securely for the journey. In a small private dining room, I found not only Rowan but also Thorn, and, surprisingly, Lady Verna. Lady Verna has volunteered to accompany you, Rowan explained as I took my seat. She's familiar with the Eastern Valleys and has combat experience. I glanced at the female alpha, who nodded slightly in acknowledgement. I told His Majesty that a female presence might be beneficial, she said, and as I mentioned to you, I have some familiarity with your grandmother's work. Rowan pushed a map toward me. You'll take the Eastern Road, avoiding the Northern Territories entirely. 8 guards will accompany you. The journey should take 3 days each way if the weather holds. As we reviewed the route, I noticed tension in Rowan's posture, a tightness around his eyes that hadn't been there yesterday. What's wrong? I asked, when Thorn and Lady Verna became engaged in their own conversation. Rowan hesitated. Darius left the palace last night against my direct orders, with 6 of his personal guard. Where did he go? Presumably north, to investigate the outbreaks himself. Rowan's voice lowered, or to ensure whatever's happening there proceeds according to plan. The implication was clear. Rowan suspected Darius might be involved in the poisonings. You think he would harm his own people? I think Darius believes he should be king, and a crisis that I cannot resolve would serve that ambition. His amber eyes met mine, which makes your mission that much more critical and dangerous. After breakfast, our party assembled in the courtyard. 8 royal guards in the king's livery mounted sleek horses, with Lady Verna already astride a dappled mare. A smaller horse, chestnut with a white blaze, waited for me. Rowan accompanied me to the mount. Ember is steady and reliable, he said, helping me into the saddle. She'll serve you well. His hands lingered at my waist, steadying me as I settled into the unfamiliar position. I hadn't ridden often, another luxury rarely afforded to Omegas in my position. Be vigilant, he said quietly, so only I could hear. If you sense danger, any danger, Tell Lady Verna immediately. She has my complete trust. I will. I promised. Something in his expression shifted. A vulnerability briefly replacing the confident mask of kingship. Return safely, Eleanor. The kingdom needs you. He paused. I need you. Before I could respond to this unexpected admission, he stepped back, resuming his regal posture. May the moon goddess light your path. We await your return. With that blessing, our party departed, hooves clattering against the cobblestones as we rode through the palace gates and into the autumn morning. I glanced back once to see Rowan's tall figure watching from the courtyard, a solitary silhouette against the pale stone walls. The journey east took us through forests ablaze with autumn colors, across rolling meadows where the grass had turned golden with the season's change. Despite the urgency of our mission, I found myself captivated by the landscape, so different from the limited world I'd known in my valley. Lady Verna proved a considerate traveling companion, offering riding tips and engaging me in conversation that helped distract from the physical discomfort of hours in the saddle. Iris would be proud of you, she said on the second day, as we paused to rest the horses near a clear stream. She always said her granddaughter would surpass her abilities one day. She spoke of me to you? I asked, surprised. Lady Verna smiled. She was certain you had the gift, even when you were small. She also feared for you because of it. Her expression grew somber. Omega healers have a difficult history in our kingdom. Coveted, exploited, sometimes fought over by powerful alphas. Is that why she kept my abilities secret? Why she never fully explained what I was? Likely. Lady Verna gazed across the stream. There was a time, centuries ago, when Omega healers were revered, protected by the pack as sacred. But power corrupts, and some began to see them as tools to be possessed, rather than individuals to be respected. She glanced at me. Rowan's mother was an Omega healer. This revelation startled me. I didn't know. Few do now. It was kept quiet even then. The old king claimed her during a similar ceremony to yours. She died when Rowan was young, officially from a fever, but rumors suggested otherwise. What kind of rumors? Lady Verna hesitated. That Lord Fenris, Darius's father, poisoned her when she refused to heal his wife, who had fallen ill with a wasting disease. There was never proof, but Rowan has distrusted the family ever since. The information cast Rowan's warnings about Darius in a new light. Why tell me this now? Because knowledge is protection, she replied simply. And because you need to understand the forces at play in our kingdom. This illness, these poisonings, they may be part of something that began long before you arrived. On the third day, we reached the familiar hills of my home valley. A bittersweet ache filled my chest as my grandmother's cottage came into view, a small stone structure nestled against a hillside, smoke curling from its chimney. Smoke? Lady Verna said sharply. Is someone there? My heart leapt. My friend Mara sometimes checks on the place in my absence. But even as I spoke, uneasiness crept through me. I hadn't told Mara when I would return. Lady Verna signaled the guards, who immediately fanned out, approaching the cottage with caution. We dismounted, waiting until they had secured the perimeter. Clear, called the captain, but someone's definitely inside. We approached the cottage door, which swung open before we reached it. I froze, staring in shock at the figure who emerged, Lord Darius. He smiled, the expression never reaching his cold eyes. Lady Eleanor. What a delightful surprise. We weren't expecting visitors. Behind him, I glimpsed two of his guards inside my grandmother's home. One held my family's chest of journals and remedies, its lock broken open. What are you doing here? Lady Verna demanded, her hand moving to the sword at her hip. The same as you, I imagine, Darius replied smoothly, seeking answers to our kingdom's troubles. When I heard the king's new Omega came from a line of healers, I thought perhaps the grandmother's home might contain useful information. He gestured toward the chest, and indeed there are some fascinating records here. Those belong to Eleanor, Lady Verna said coldly. By royal decree, she was sent to retrieve them. Of course, and she's welcome to them, once we've finished our review. His gaze shifted to me, assessing. Unless there's something specific you're looking for? Perhaps about corrupted shifts, or water purification rituals. The specific mention confirmed my worst fears. He knew exactly what we sought, and why. Those journals are my inheritance, I said, finding my voice at last. They contain my family's private knowledge. You have no right to them. Rights are such fluid things, aren't they? Darius stepped closer, just as roles can change quickly. An Omega one day, the king's confidant the next, a king today perhaps, something else tomorrow. The threat hung in the air between us. Lady Verna moved slightly, positioning herself between Darius and me. Your implication borders on treason, Lord Darius, she said quietly. He laughed. Observation isn't treason, Lady Verna. I merely note how quickly fortunes can change. His eyes never left mine. I wonder, did Rowan tell you of his mother? Of her gifts, so similar to yours? Of how they failed to save her in the end? Step aside, Darius, Lady Verna commanded. By the king's authority, we claim those journals and this property. For a tense moment, I thought he would refuse. Then he shrugged, the gesture deceptively casual. Take them with my blessing. I've learned what I needed to know. He glanced at his guards, who set down the chest and moved toward the door. As they prepared to leave, Darius paused beside me. A word of friendly advice, little healer, he murmured. Kings come and go, but power, true power, endures. Consider carefully where your loyalties lie. With that cryptic warning, he and his men mounted their horses and departed, heading west, back toward the palace, back toward Rowan. Lady Verna immediately dispatched one of our guards to ride ahead with warning of Darius's movements, while the others secured the cottage. Inside, I found organized chaos. Drawers stood open, shelves had been searched, and in the center, the chest that contained my grandmother's most precious work lay violated. Its contents partially scattered. I knelt beside it, my hands shaking as I gathered the leather-bound journals. We need to check if anything's missing, I told Lady Verna. I know which journals contained information about water rituals. After a thorough inventory, my fears were confirmed. The purification ritual journal is gone, I said, my heart sinking. He must have taken it. Lady Verna's expression darkened. Then we must return to the palace immediately. If Darius has that knowledge, he could ensure the contamination can't be reversed, I finished. Or worse, he could alter it to strengthen the poison. As we hastily packed the remaining journals, I found my grandmother's oldest book, bound in faded blue leather. Inside, I discovered a folded parchment I'd never seen before, tucked between pages about healing sacred sites. The parchment contained a single ritual, written in my grandmother's hand, but in an older style than her usual writing, for the purification of waters corrupted by hatred and silverbind, to be performed by one with the healer's gift. At the source of the corruption, under the crescent moon, the healer's blood freely given will cleanse what malice has tainted. Hope and dread mingled as I realized what this meant. I could potentially counter the poisoning, but only at its source, at Black Crest Mountain, and only with a ritual that required my blood. And we had to reach it before the next crescent moon, just 3 nights away. We need to change course, I told Lady Verna, showing her the ritual. Not to the palace, but north, to Black Crest Mountain. She read the parchment, her expression grave. This is dangerous, Eleanor. Blood rituals are powerful, but unpredictable. Do we have a choice? I asked. If Darius reaches the king with false information, or prevents us from accessing the source, she nodded slowly. You're right. We ride north. She squeezed my shoulder. Rowan chose wisely when he claimed you, Eleanor Moonriver. You truly are your grandmother's heir. As we prepared to depart, I clutched my silver pendant, my grandmother's words echoing in my mind. Even the slightest sliver of light can illuminate the darkest night. In the face of Darius's plotting and the kingdom's suffering, I had to believe that light could prevail. Mounting Ember once more, I turned my face north toward Black Crest Mountain and the source of the corruption, toward my destiny as an Omega healer, and whatever awaited me there.